Having an effective brand strategy can mean the difference between being a sought after expert and just being an afterthought. Of course, none of us wants to be an afterthought. And that's why I'm so grateful for today's guest to join me on the Brand Gravity Show. I'm your host, psychology driven brand strategist Kaye Putnam, and my amazing guest is Ericka Saurit. And we'll be talking today with the specific context of the clients that she works with, which is businesses in the interior design space. Architects, interior designers, home builders, those types of businesses. But truly, the framework that Ericka shares with us in the following conversation is applicable to so many different types of businesses. I truly believe that you're going to get a ton out of this conversation. After a 20-year global career in design and marketing, Ericka Saurit founded Saurit Creative with a mission to support and elevate brands across the entire home industry. Ericka believes that the more that clients and customers understand the value of working with a designer, the better world will create for everyone. Ericka began her career as an interior designer, working with ESI, which is now NBBJ in New York, and Ralph Applebaum Associates in Beijing for numerous cultural and hospitality clients across Asia, the United States, and Europe, and then transitioned her career to work in marketing for home brands in 2012. As a global brand marketing leader, she's overseen digital product development at Airbnb in San Francisco, created immersive physical and virtual brand experiences for Tag Heuer, Estee Lauder, and Procter & Gamble, in addition to working for top home and lifestyle brands around the world. Ericka's an inspiring and motivating public speaker, frequently invited to lead industry discussions on marketing, brand strategy, and storytelling on stages across the world. A Southerner at heart and a traveler by trade, she maintains residence in both North Carolina and the south of France. Let's get to the conversation. Ericka, thank you so much for being on the Brand Gravity Show. I'm so thrilled to have you here and to talk all things branding and storytelling. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Kaye. I'm super excited to be here too. And yeah, let's go.
You've been working in branding and business and specifically the home industry for a long time. Can you just bring us up to speed with what brought you to current day and what you're doing now?
Of course. So in the design, architecture, and construction industry, you'd be surprised to learn that interior designers are oftentimes brought in late or the last minute on a project. They're under leveraged for their skills. They're underappreciated for their work. And I think it's such an incredible loss considering how much the potential of interior design has on transforming people's lives particularly in a home project. As a psychologist, you understand that space really plays a big role in our emotional capacity, our learning ability. So it's my mission to help interior designers speak better, tell better stories, engage with their clients, engage with their partners, which are realtors and architects, on a really emotional and kind of fundamental level, like a brand. So I'm a former interior designer. I did that for about 10 years all around the world. And about 10 years ago, I was kind of led into marketing for the design firm I was working for. And then that evolved into a number of marketing positions that evolved into branding positions. I went back to school and studied and got sort of a more formal foundation about brand. And now in 2020, I started my own business, Saurit Creative, where we support interior designers and home brands with brand storytelling and marketing services to make sure that they transform their mindset from thinking like a business to thinking like a brand and really get a seat at the table early on.
Do you have a favorite client or case study that exemplifies the power of brand?
So I will start. I want to talk a little bit about Marie Kondo. Most people, and she's obviously not a client, but I use her work a lot when I try to introduce my clients to the power of brand and the power of brand being, I love the best way. I know you had Marcus Collins on your podcast and he talked about ideology, but thinking about the power of what a brand can represent and I'm able you to do is a way I talk to designers about how the brand will help influence how they run their business. I have a 3-part kind of brand strategy that I use to also evolve into brand storytelling, but I will introduce that and use Marie Kondo as an example. Most people know who she is. She's one of Time Magazine's most influential people. Obviously, she is a organizing specialist, which she kind of grew into this position or grew up in Japan into a world where she lived close with her grandmother. Her grandmother always taught her that everything you have should be well considered. Everything you have should be, you know, something that you treasure. And so she that or cherish things that you cherish. So she became an organizing consultant because she kept hearing, other consultants say things like, throw everything away, reduce, reduce, reduce. But her script was more like, keep only the things that you really love. And so that kind of extraordinary point of view is the first E in this kind of brand strategy. Is I ask designers to really, and brands in the home industry, to really think about the first kind of thing to define that differentiator, but think about it in a way that is a compilation of the things that make you unique and things that make you special. The second
Mhm.
E is emotional. So her message is relevant to so many people is because she's not selling like a particular style. She's not even selling luxury. She's selling the idea that your things, even if they're not expensive things, even if they're not things that you feel like you have to go and invest in, they need to be special to you. And because when you see them and when you encounter them, they will spark joy. And that's her tagline, as we all know. But that kind of concept is very emotional for people. That's the second E. So the first is extraordinary, and that's really understanding that very special experience or that very special thing about you. Second thing is emotional. So you take that and you start to create stories around that emotional differentiator for you. So you want them to be relevant. Obviously, she's talking to people who already realize that they have potentially, or have the desire to make a change in their life and in their home. And what's so interesting is that this kind of idea of sparking joy expands itself, not just from your stuff in your space and your interior, but it expands into all things in your life. And again, that very sort of emotional resonance is what makes her story and her brand so interesting to so many people around the world, no matter, from the US to any part of Europe, all parts of Asia. She's been able to really, define this concept of living in a very unique way and without language as a barrier too, which I think is really
Mhm.
amazing and relevant and interesting. And then the third E is more of a tactical kind of application for brand storytelling and brand strategy, is to say, how do you then, once you've created the story, and we do that with clients, is like, how do you apply that, as you know, across experiential touch points for the
Mhm.
brand itself? And that can be anything from physical touch points all the way through to digital, any kind of digital marketing, social, PR. How does that brand story stay consistent but experiential? Like, how is it that you can guarantee that that message won't change from one person to another depending on where they are in your customer journey or your client journey? So those are the three E's that I use with clients. The idea of something that is extraordinary, emotional, and experiential.
Amazing. And we're going to dive more into some of these pieces. But you do have
Great.
a brand audit that's available on your site. Is that right, Erica?
Yeah. So the brand audit is a one page, it's a freebie you can download just to start to put everything on one page. And we focus on brand messaging first, brand storytelling, because I think as business owners, as entrepreneurs, people who actually don't have any background in marketing or branding, we assume that, we're saying something to potentially be creative, because designers tell me this all the time. Well, I said it once on LinkedIn. I said it once on Instagram. I said it once on my website. I have no idea what my web developer put on the SEO copy. I don't know what people read. Putting all of this on one page actually, though, shows people that potentially they have a messaging issue. It gives them an idea that that message can be unclear across all of their marketing channels. I ask them to even add, what's on your business card? What's on your email signature? What are you saying when people ask you, so what do you do? Right? If you meet someone at a networking event, or someone is even going to be sharing a testimonial about working with you, how are they describing your business? And once you put these things on one page, either as screen screen grabs, screen captures, or you're typing them into a PDF, or you're writing them down as you go. The first thing to notice is, one, are they consistent? This is not the place to be creative, as you know.
Yep.
You want to say the same thing over and over again. And you want to make sure that tagline or that, 2 or 3 word or line description of your business is, asking and answering the questions that your clients are coming to you for, right? What problems do you solve? How do you solve them? Like, what are your capabilities? What are your services potentially? And then what's the result, right? And that framework is really easy
Mhm.
to answer quickly. But if you want to be, more emotionally relevant with that answer, the idea is to understand, obviously, the core emotions that are driving the behavior of your clients who come to you. And we really dig into that from, like I said, the designer's point of view. Why do clients, you know, engage in home renovations or engage in interior designer? And there's a multitude of reasons and psychologies behind that. And we kind of dig into that. They understand these things. It's really interesting, but yet they've never articulated them in their own business. So that's where we start with
Mhm.
storytelling.
I love that. I would love to dive further into that first E. Remind me what it is. I have a sense, but I don't want to misspeak.
Extraordinary. What makes you
Extraordinary.
extraordinary? Right.
Yes.
And it's
Yes.
really of course, many, many, many brand strategists begin with that differentiator. That word is scary for a lot of people.
Yes.
They think, it's a big word. And of course,
Yeah.
sometimes people can get overwhelmed with the technical kind of component of defining your education or defining your, you know, qualifications or your certifications, especially when it comes to interior design. You may or may not, depending on your level of practice, have those. But I say what is making you extraordinary, if we think about your culture or your heritage or how you grew up or where you grew up or, the languages you may or may not, speak or just there's so much more to you than, the school you went to or how, how much education you have or, and especially true with designers. There's a lot of interior designers that move into design from previous careers, from careers in finance, from careers in, healthcare. Oftentimes, a lot of times, education is a background, and those skills are super super relevant. They make you extraordinary because you come with this already sort of understanding of business in a completely different way. Designers are notorious for having a very diverse set of approaches for running their business. There's like no standard way of doing it. So always super excited when a client comes to me with like a background that's non-traditional. Like it's not anyway. So that extraordinary part of you, defining that is sort of just sitting down and taking an inventory of every single thing about yourself. And sometimes designers will throw things out, and I'm like, yeah, let's go with that. Let's see where that will take us. If
Mhm.
it's, again, a lot of background, things about travel, things about education. So, yeah, extraordinary is the first E.
Yes. Yeah, that was exactly what I was looking for because so many people get hung up on they can't see themselves clearly. So it becomes really difficult to know how to communicate your difference. And when we
Right.
get stuck in that equation, we start looking at all of the ways that we're the same. And that's the exact opposite of what we want to do as a brand. So those are all really
Absolutely.
great examples. Hmm. Beautiful. Talk to me more about the application of storytelling. Once we understand what our core messages are, how are your clients using them?
So we focus on 3 different digital marketing channels: their website, social media, and then email marketing, which for designers is always, and maybe it's true for in a lot of different businesses too, but it's always sort of a very difficult conversation to kind of bring designers along on understanding the value of investing in like a really solid email marketing strategy. And it's really fun to watch them transform and rethink it about how it can be, again, a conversation. You get a kind of dedicated, place in someone's daily, potentially daily, monthly, weekly, however frequently you do it. You get a place in their work day or sometimes in their personal day, depending on the email that they give you. So that's a really powerful place to share your story. And I often tell designers too, it's not just that you are getting, they may or may not open your email, but they see you in their inbox. They're reminded of your business. They're reminded of what you do. You have that, very short subject line. You have the preview text. You have a chance to really write something that catches their attention. And that's sort of the premise of storytelling anyway. It's you really want to make people lean in and ask questions in their mind, ask questions to you out loud, type them back to you as a reply for an email or engage with you on social media. So we focus on those three specific channels for designers and brands, home brands in general.
What are some common mistakes that you see showing up again and again? What can people
Yeah.
avoid?
Well, I'll say certainly for the websites, there is some unspoken rule that interior design websites should just be full of photos only and not say a word or even have maybe there's a small paragraph on their about page that introduces them. It talks about, you know, their background, potentially their education. It talks about, there's like again a formula for just saying like exactly who you are. And so when designers come to me, they are in a variety of places in their typically they will come to me because they've engaged someone to help with their website. They want to redesign it, they
Mm,
need to update it, they've got new portfolio images, whatever, a new team, perhaps whatever they've grown out of their old website. And they have either been working with someone and that person doesn't necessarily understand our industry or doesn't understand them. The copy feels wrong, the voice, the tone, all of it just is off. And so a lot of times we, you know, engage with, projects that are already kind of in process. We have to do some tweaking. But the most common thing I see is just really boring, samey same language that doesn't mean anything. It's full of jargon, it's full of design speak, it's full of flowery kind of words that designers say to each other. So I see a lot of designers sort of
mhm.
trying to impress other designers with, the way they can talk about their business, but in fact our clients don't understand anything. They don't understand and they could be potentially turned off or intimidated by, jumping into a language that they don't know anything about. I also see a big mistake is that I see really gorgeous imagery, but without any context. There's no
Mm,
description of, again, that problem, solution, result. You don't understand if it was a completely full renovation down to the studs, could have been, or it's a
yeah.
potential just to like a, paint refresh. You do not understand anything about the context of a project unless a designer makes an effort to kind of either build out case studies or add further description. So we do that with a lot of designers. I say, the language on your website functions in two ways. One, it invites your clients into your story, helps them understand how you're extraordinary. It gives the emotional connection that they may or may not be yet aware that they, the emotional reasons behind what's driving them to renovate or redesign their home. But it also serves as SEO. It's going to help kind of
Yeah.
help them organically be found faster if they're in a market or in a community where people are looking for local designers. So it's sort of an added plus on top of just, again, being very clear. Or the tenet of marketing is clarity, one of
Mm.
them, and consistency. So, we have a lot of that conversation about, the websites needing renovation, not be boring, be unforgettable. You get just a few minutes in front of clients, especially online and especially on, social media to really catch their attention, catch their their interest and stand out from everyone else.
That mistake I see so often across many different industries. I think photographers also have that tendency to talk to each other
Yeah.
in their copy and in their websites. We see it with health professionals all of the time. That's a
Yes.
really common one. I'm so glad that you highlighted it. Yeah, talk to me a little bit more about that emotional trigger. What are
Ooh,
some
I'd
of
love
those
to.
emotions, yeah, that
Yeah.
make people hire designers? Or yeah, what are some examples that you can give?
Okay. So from my background in interior design, and how I kind of how I formed or trans kind of moved over into marketing was that I was I was the pitch girl in my office sort of throughout my design career. I was the one who could take the designer's stories that they were, bringing to either, it depended on the studio. I did this in several different functions, but they were trying to sell either their design ideas to, the rest of the team, or selling them to the marketing team so that the marketing team could sell them back to the client. And I saw
Mhm.
so many gorgeous, really powerful, sometimes, life-changing designs like die on the presentation floor because designers couldn't sell the idea. They couldn't get within just a few minutes to the essence of the story. They couldn't make it emotional. They couldn't tie it back to the business objectives. They couldn't really kind of frame it in a way that brought it to life. And I thought that was such a terrible shame. So I acted as the intermediary between, the design team and the marketing team, or even eventually the design team and the client, presenting the work and presenting, getting buy-in. And what I learned then was that the fastest way to get into people's hearts and minds, like brands do, fastest way to get, connect with people was to understand what their motivations were, to understand like what they were coming into the story with, and it, again, understanding business objectives is part of that. But we all, no matter what that purchase is about, whether you're purchasing design services or you're purchasing hairspray or toothpaste or, a car or an expensive, you know, piece of clothes, something like it, a device, anything. All of that decision making is motivated by a story. It's all motivated by what a brand is telling us and what we think when we interact with that story, what we think about ourselves, what we think about our business, what we think, what we're meeting with. And so I had been chasing this idea with clients and really trying to pinpoint without formalizing it too much, and really trying to understand what those motivations were. I kept seeing some recurring themes when I was, interviewing clients about their clients, and like really doing
Mhm.
why, finding out like what it is that they're really coming for. They're not necessarily coming for, you know, a renovation to their garage so that they can have, an extra space. They're coming potentially because their families are transitioning, their children are leaving the home, or parents are moving in, or maybe they're going through like a divorce, or they're getting married. Something's
Yeah.
happening in their world that is motivating them to either increase their space, but in a sense, increasing their space means there's something more too. Do they want to create a space where they can entertain and be potentially seen and heard by their neighbors? Do they want to create a space where they want their children who go off to college to come back to because they feel like a sense of belonging? And, there are deeper emotions there. So the five that I really found that were resonant with interior design or home design clients were, the first one is a sense of belonging. I see that a lot with families and designers who are creating kind of primary homes again for those families in transition, some sort of transition phase. The second one is to be seen and heard, but that kind of manifests itself in many different ways. And I gave an example of how, a lot of times young professionals who are purchasing their first home, they want to be seen as successful. They want it to feel like, to feel like them. That's another
Yeah.
one of those sort of generic, boring statements that nobody knows what that means. But if you drill down into it, the idea is like, okay, now I have my own space. I just want people to come over and sort of, be in my world and see me and hear me for, who I am and who I'm becoming. So that's the second one. That our life has purpose and meaning, that there is something greater to be gained from, you know, either our own altruism, our own sort of giving, our own sense of, it's like we
Yeah.
really can, a lot of clients that build second homes, legacy homes will have clients that are thinking about this. The idea of wonder and wander. So like wonder with an O and wander with an A. The idea that the more you explore, the more you discover about yourself and about your world, right? So there's like a big kind of meta emotion there that's driving someone, as well as an internal kind of, you know, personal discovery, journey of personal discovery. And so those are the core, the core emotions. Most of, I mean, there are sometimes others, little outliers that I can pinpoint, but that's where we start from
Yeah.
a really high level to be able to break down stories for their brands. And I think once a designer fully, or a business owner, I keep saying designer, but this is true for most, I would say most kind of creative businesses, is
Mhm.
that the clients, once you understand that core motivation behind what they're really looking for, that storytelling mixed with that extraordinary piece becomes much easier. Now, of course,
Yes.
there's a tech component, with the copywriting and like really building it out, but that's the magic. That's my favorite part of the whole process, is really, getting clients to hear and see that. And once they do, they really engage. They're so much more bought in, which is great.
Yes. I think that you are underlining something that's really profound about branding. And I wanted to just echo it back to you because
Yeah.
branding at its base is how are you different from everybody else in the
Hmm.
market? So that's that extraordinary piece. But then how are we
Yeah.
connecting? How are we reaching into people's lives and
Right.
reflecting that back to them? And I
Yeah.
think entrepreneurs get a little bit hung up on the fact that the emotions that you're tapping into are probably going to be similar to what some of your competitors are tapping into
Yeah.
if they're doing this well, because they're very core to the human experience and to the client experience. And
That's
that's
right.
okay. That's why we pair it with that extraordinary piece so that you can stand out, but
Mhm.
we still have to reflect some of those same emotions that are probably showing up again
Right.
and again and again in the market. So love your system. And
Yep.
then, of course, we need to then consistently communicate that, which was your
You.
final E. Really beautiful work. I
Right.
have to ask, just out of my
You.
own curiosity, how did you end up in the south of France?
So COVID changed the world. I started my business in COVID. I made a big transition in my life in many, many, many ways. And one of those were, I had friends, like I said, I worked all around the world. So I've been very fortunate to maintain friendships, deep friendships with people all around the world. And in fact, several of them, three of them live in France, and two in Marseille, which is where I am, and the other in
Yeah.
Paris. And so they said, you know what? Things are changing. You're now running a business. And it was, again, early 2021. They said, why don't you just come to France and see if you can, run your business from here? And I did. So I haven't looked back. You lived in Europe too, so you understand how interesting. I stay inspired even by kind of day-to-day
Oh, yeah.
things here. But I do
Mhm.
obviously get back and forth to the US. So I say I live in
Yeah.
two Souths. I live in the south of the US and the south of France.
Amazing. Amazing. Oh, this was fantastic. Tell people, where can they find more about you and your storytelling branding framework? Where should
Absolutely.
they go?
Go to my website first. It's Saurit, Saurit Creative.com. That brand audit that we talked about is there. You can do sauritcreative.com/brand audit, all one word, and download it. It's free from there. I'm on Instagram, same thing, Saurit Creative, but you can book a free kind of discovery call if you want to chat about all things brand or design or travel. I'm here. So very much available.
Amazing. Ericka, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and
Thanks for
insight with
having me,
us today.
Kaye.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation. That was so enlightening for me with Erica. I would love to hear the comments if you happen to be watching on YouTube. If you're listening on your favorite podcast player or service, send me an email, k@kputnam.com. Which of the three E's are you going to focus on next? I find that when we simplify and clarify what brand strategy is into a simple framework like this, it's both powerful and really illuminating because we figure out where we might be lacking in our own actions, in our own business. So I would love to hear from you, love to continue this conversation. And like Erica said, you can grab her brand audit. We'll have all of the links either below the video or in our show notes at kputnam.com/podcast. Thanks for listening.